The flashing red and blue lights painted the living room a grotesque tableau of crimson and cobalt. The room, once a sanctuary of warmth and laughter, now stood as a silent witness to the chaos that had erupted. The lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the familiar space feel alien and foreboding. It was as if the very essence of the room had been tainted by the night's events, leaving behind an unsettling stillness that seemed to echo the cries and shouts that had once filled the air. Shards of glass from the shattered picture window glittered on the floor like fallen stars, each one a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded. The glass, once a barrier between the inside world and the outside, now lay in ruins, symbolizing the broken lives and shattered dreams of those who had lived here. Each fragment seemed to hold a piece of the night's story, reflecting the fear and desperation that had permeated the air. The once clear window, now a gaping hole, allowed the cold night air to seep in, adding to the chilling atmosphere that enveloped the room. The once pristine white carpet was now marred by a dark stain, a chilling testament to the night's violence. The stain, stark against the pale background, told a story of struggle and pain. It was a grim reminder of the events that had transpired, a permanent mark on the fabric of the home. The carpet, which had once been a soft and welcoming surface, now felt tainted and unclean, a symbol of the innocence lost and the brutality that had taken its place. The air hung heavy with the metallic scent of blood and the bitter tang of betrayal. It was a scent that clung to the walls, the furniture, and the very air itself, refusing to be ignored. The room, once filled with love and trust, now felt oppressive and suffocating, as if the very atmosphere had turned against its inhabitants. The sense of betrayal was palpable, a heavy weight that pressed down on anyone who entered, reminding them of the broken bonds and shattered trust that had led to this moment.
The neighbors whispered amongst themselves, their faces pale with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. They had heard the commotion, seen the flashing lights, and now they stood in small clusters, exchanging hushed speculations and theories. Their voices, though low, carried a sense of urgency and unease, as if they were trying to make sense of the senseless. The community, once tight-knit and friendly, now felt fractured and uncertain, each person wondering how well they really knew their neighbors. They had all seen the happy family photos, the smiling faces that hid the darkness lurking beneath. The pictures, once symbols of joy and togetherness, now seemed like cruel mockeries of the reality that had been hidden behind closed doors. Each smile, each embrace captured in those photos now felt like a lie, a facade that had been carefully constructed to hide the truth. The neighbors couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden behind those smiles, what other darkness lurked beneath the surface. Now, they looked at the house with a mixture of pity and suspicion, wondering how such a tragedy could befall a family that seemed so perfect. The house, once a symbol of stability and happiness, now stood as a grim reminder of the fragility of appearances. The neighbors' gazes were filled with questions, their minds racing with possibilities and what-ifs. They couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, a nagging doubt that perhaps they had missed the signs, that perhaps they could have done something to prevent this. The perfect facade had been shattered, and in its place was a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the brightest smiles.
Just a few months ago, the scene had been drastically different. Laughter echoed through the air as the family gathered for their annual summer barbecue. The aroma of grilled burgers and hot dogs mingled with the sweet scent of freshly cut grass, creating an almost idyllic atmosphere.
John, the father, flipped burgers on the grill, his face beaming with pride as he watched his wife, Mary, and his stepson, David, play frisbee with their golden retriever, Max. Their laughter was infectious, drawing in the neighbors who stopped to admire the picture-perfect family.
John had worked hard to provide this life for them, a life filled with love, laughter, and security. He had no idea that the very foundation of his happiness was built on a lie. The first cracks in their seemingly perfect life appeared subtly, almost imperceptibly. John would catch Mary and David exchanging lingering glances, their eyes filled with a secret understanding that excluded him. He dismissed it as his imagination, a figment of his insecurities.
Late-night whispers behind closed doors, hurried phone calls where the other person hung up as soon as he entered the room. and the faint scent of Mary's perfume lingering in the air long after David had left. The signs were all there, but John, blinded by his love and trust, refused to see them.
He clung to the image of his happy family, unwilling to acknowledge the possibility that it was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. The truth, when it finally unraveled, was like a punch to the gut, a forceful blow that left John reeling. It was as if the very foundation of his life had been ripped out from under him, leaving him suspended in a void of disbelief and agony. The revelation hit him hard like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of him. He felt a physical pain, a sharp stabbing sensation in his chest, as if his heart was being torn apart, leaving John gasping for air, struggling to breathe, as if the very act of drawing breath had become an insurmountable challenge. His mind raced, trying to process the enormity of what he had just witnessed. His world imploding around him, the life he had known crumbling into pieces, the future he had envisioned, the dreams he had cherished, all seemed to vanish in an instant, replaced by a bleak, desolate landscape of despair.
He had come home early from work one afternoon, a rare occurrence that he had planned meticulously. He wanted to surprise Mary, to show her how much he cared, how deeply he loved her. Hoping to surprise Mary with a romantic dinner, he had spent the entire day planning. He had bought her favorite flowers, prepared her favorite meal, and set the table with the finest china. He wanted everything to be perfect, only to find her and David in each other's arms, their passion undeniable. The sight of them together, so intimately entwined, was like a dagger to his heart. He felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak all at once.
The look of shock on their faces quickly morphed into guilt, then defiance. It was as if they were daring him to react, to confront them. The audacity of their defiance only fueled his rage.
Mary, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of shame and anger, stood there, unable to meet his gaze. Her silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos that raged within him. Made no attempt to explain, her silence speaking volumes. It was as if she had already resigned herself to the consequences, whatever they might be. Her guilt was palpable, but so was her defiance.
David, on the other hand, met John's gaze with a cold, calculating stare, a look that sent chills down his spine. There was no remorse in his eyes, only a smug satisfaction, a smirk playing on his lips as if he had won some twisted game. The contempt in his expression was unmistakable, a clear indication that he felt no guilt, no shame.
It was at that moment that John realized the depth of their betrayal, the years of deceit that had poisoned his marriage and shattered his family. The realization was like a weight pressing down on him, suffocating him. The years of deceit that had poisoned his marriage and shattered his family. The pain was unbearable, a searing agony that consumed him. He felt as if he was drowning in a sea of despair with no hope of rescue. As he stood there, memories of happier times flooded his mind. The laughter, the love, the moments of joy they had shared. It all seemed so distant now, like a dream that had turned into a nightmare. He looked at his wedding ring, a symbol of the vows they had taken, the promises they had made. It felt like a cruel joke now, a reminder of the trust that had been shattered. With a heavy heart, he knew what he had to do. He couldn't stay, couldn't continue living a lie. He packed his bags, each item a painful reminder of the life he was leaving behind. As he walked out the door, he felt a mixture of sadness and relief. It was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he had to find his own path, to rebuild his life from the ashes of his broken marriage. The road ahead was uncertain, but he was determined to find hope, to find happiness again. The sunrise in the distance was a symbol of new beginnings, a reminder that even in the darkest moments there is always a glimmer of light. And so, with a deep breath, he took his first step towards a new future, a future where he could heal, grow, and find peace. The journey would be long and difficult, but he was ready to face it, one step at a time. The argument that ensued was explosive, fueled by years of repressed anger, resentment, and betrayal. It was a confrontation that had been brewing for a long time, simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to erupt. The tension in the room was palpable, a ticking time bomb ready to explode.
Words were exchanged, accusations hurled like daggers, each one piercing deeper than the last. The verbal onslaught was relentless, each word a weapon designed to inflict maximum pain. Voices were raised, each trying to drown out the other, creating a cacophony of anger and hurt.
The air crackled with tension, the atmosphere so thick it was almost impossible to breathe. Every breath was labored, every heartbeat a drumbeat of impending doom. The room seemed to close in, the walls pressing down, suffocating those within.
John, his mind clouded by rage and heartbreak, lunged at David, his fists connecting with his stepson's face. The impact was brutal, a physical manifestation of the emotional turmoil that had been building for years. Each punch was a release of pent-up frustration, a desperate attempt to make the pain stop.
Furniture was overturned, lamps shattered, the sounds of their struggle echoing through the house. The once peaceful home was now a battlefield, every corner a testament to the violence that had erupted. The chaos was overwhelming, a whirlwind of destruction that left nothing untouched.
Mary's screams were lost in the maelstrom, her pleas for them to stop falling on deaf ears. She was a voice of reason in a sea of madness, her desperation a stark contrast to the violence around her, but her words were drowned out, swallowed by the storm of anger and pain.
The night culminated in a sickening thud, the sound of David's body hitting the floor. It was a sound that would haunt those present for years to come, a grim reminder of the night's events. The impact was final, a punctuation mark on a night of unthinkable violence. His eyes staring blankly up at the ceiling, silence descended, heavy and suffocating, broken only by Mary's hysterical sobs. The room, once filled with the sounds of life, was now a tomb, the silence a testament to the night's horrors. Mary's cries were a haunting echo, a reminder of the pain and loss that had unfolded. Time seemed to stand still in the aftermath, each second stretching into an eternity. The clock on the wall ticked on, indifferent to the tragedy that had unfolded. It was a cruel reminder that life goes on even in the face of unimaginable pain.
The police arrived, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. They moved with practiced efficiency, their faces grim as they surveyed the scene. It was a night they would not soon forget, a night that would leave a mark on all who were involved.
The officers took notes, documenting every detail, every piece of evidence. They were methodical, their training kicking in as they worked to piece together the events of the night. But even they could not escape the weight of what had happened, the sense of loss that hung heavy in the air.
Mary was comforted by a police officer, her tears streaming down her face. She was a picture of grief, her body racked with sobs as she tried to make sense of the night's events. The officer's presence was a small comfort, a reminder that she was not alone in her pain.
As dawn broke, the first light of morning illuminated the scene. It was a new day, but the scars of the night would remain. The house, once a home, was now a crime scene, a place of sorrow and loss. The events of the night would cast a long shadow, a reminder of the violence that had shattered their lives.
A family photo lay on the floor, a reminder of happier times. It was a stark contrast to the chaos around it, a symbol of what had been lost. The faces in the photo smiled up, unaware of the tragedy that would befall them. It was a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating impact of violence.
The broken window was a silent witness to the night's events, its shards of glass scattered on the floor. It was a symbol of the shattered lives, the broken dreams. The house, once a sanctuary, was now a place of pain and loss. The events of the night had left a mark, a scar that would never fully heal.